All right, let's try that again. Hey, is my mic working this time? Cool. Go to hell, Zoom. Welcome, welcome into Jacked Ramsays Live. Danny Marang, Brandon Sprague. Everything worked when I was testing it before I pressed go. I pressed go, and Zoom decided it wanted to completely go out. Okay. First of all, thank you. Welcome back to all of you who are now streaming in for the second part of this now. Technology sucks. Good times. But thank you. We appreciate you. The not exactly live breaking news. It's obviously something we've talked about a ton with as it pertains to OG and Anunoby, but we have some other like news bits to get to, considering the draft workouts today, as well as the Trailblazers hiring the third assistant GM, and we'll get into a little bit as well. Everybody letting me know in the comments that it wasn't working in the sound. I know it's welcome to technology and running it through 12 different things. Apparently, Zoom hates me with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. Speaking of, Brandon Sprague, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at some round of applause. Hey.
Here we go.
So lots of changes. First of all, it's kind of popped it on Twitter. Yes, Puppy Tanner is okay. He is home. That's why we're a little bit late here. I got a call that he was ready to go, and I rushed out of the room to go get him. He's doing okay. He's not great, but he should be good to go. I've taken the time to make sure he was good, and then beyond that to wipe the tears from my eyes because I was a complete and utter disaster for about 45 minutes. So that happens. But the news of the day, the Portland Trailblazers, Brandon Sprague, have been linked to OG Anunoby. This is clearly the first time we're hearing about it. This is not something we've talked about, not one bit.
Nobody's mentioned that name one time.
Nope.
Not on this pod. Nope. Never been mentioned before. Never been talked about before. By the way, should be noted just for like clarity here. I'm also obviously I'm glad to see you're doing okay. Yeah, obviously we're all thinking about you.
You're dealing with your own stuff.
I'm also dealing with my wife is out. We're taping a pod at 6:20, and I have a 6-year-old who has like 101 temperature and a cough. So that's in the middle of this podcast get up for whatever reason. That's really what it is. So thanks for being with us today. It's nice to see you guys back hanging out again because obviously there's a lot to talk about. I'll just be honest with you. I have no idea anything about this new general manager outside of anything I've read. I've never heard the name before, but I'd love to hear any kind of tidbits you've heard. The OG Anunoby stuff, I think, was really encouraging. Yet another example of Portland being mentioned as maybe in a very aggressive team as one of the lead getters if OG Anunoby becomes available.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing. We'll kind of the framing for this as we kind of get into it is the Portland Trailblazers have now been nationally linked to Deandre Ayton and OG Anunoby, along with Jeremy Grant. Those are the three best players they've been nationally linked with for probably a decade, because nothing has ever really said that that's going to happen. But it's a good place to be. And again, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. Like, rate, review, subscribe, help us grow the show. I'm here doing it with a puppy return, and Brandon's here doing it with what I can only imagine is a sick kid that will make him do his morning show from home tomorrow.
I wish. I wish. We'll be sucking that thing up and driving in.
We got people in the chat saying they appreciate you and hope your kid feels better. So appreciate all you guys. Thank you.
Good timing. Hashtag good timing on those comments as she coughs again.
It's all good.
She doesn't have COVID. That's what we know. She's got just a nasty little bug. And hopefully it goes away soon.
All right, so let's get into the news of the hour. This is from Jake Fischer, who obviously we've had on the show. Jake is about as reliable as it gets. He's the funny thing that has been this for me is that when we first broached the OG Anunoby stuff 2 months ago.
I'd say about two and a half months ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. Was that the pushback was, why would Toronto do this? There's never in a million years, why would Toronto do this? Why would Toronto do this? And the way that we framed it then is the same way it's being framed now is this is straight from Jake Fischer's reporting. Following a standout season from Rookie of the Year, Scottie Barnes, word is circulated among rival front offices that Anunoby grew dissatisfied at times with his role in Toronto, where Barnes joined Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet as the primary ball handlers in Nick Nurse's offense. So let's go back in time here a little bit, Brandon. OG Anunoby 2.5 years ago, basically going into the bubble, like pre-bubble, people were talking about him as possibly being Kawhi 2.0. A guy that could blow up an opponent's offense, guard 1 through 4, could slide up to 5s on the non-MVP types, but like one of the 5, 6, 7 best defenders in the NBA. On ball, in team scheme, blow up pick and roll actions, absolute menace in passing lanes. Like he's built in a lab to dismantle modern day offenses. And offensively, he showed the ability to have a little bit of wiggle to his game. He could create for himself. He could create for others. Knockdown shooter from the 3-point line with a little bit of rim pressure. Not a ton, but just, enough. A secondary rim pressure. Let's call it that. And still incredibly young. He's 24 years old now. He's on a fantastic contract. It's going to drop below $18 million this year and then above 18. So you want to call it about an $18 million average annual value over the next 2 years with an option year on the fourth year, but the third year remaining in his deal. Some questions in the chat. Is OG a 3 or a 4? OG is a 3 who can slide to the 4, where a guy like Jeremy Grant is a 4. Like you don't really want to play Grant at the 3. You want to play OG at the 3 and be like, we can go with a different kind of lineup. We can go OG at the 4. And so if you look at Toronto right now, Brandon, the position they're in right now, as Jake kind of highlighted, is that they've got a bunch of additional creators and a bunch of guys who need the ball. And that's without even mentioning Gary Trent Jr. Now, I don't know about you, but I love me some Gare Bear. But Gary is 100% a play ender. He is not a keep the ball moving kind of guy. He is a modern-day Wes Matthews. When that ball hits his hands at 8 seconds of the shot clock, ladies and gentlemen, that shot is going up. He is not the guy who's going to make the skip pass or create for others or attack downhill, draw collapse defenses, then kick it over. He is a guy who, when the ball ends up in his hands and it's more than halfway through that shot clock, he is going to go out there and take the shot or put the pressure on the defense to try to figure some stuff out. When you look at Anunoby, is there enough smoke here for you to generally be like, yeah, no, I get it. I can see Toronto moving it because, my God, Toronto Twitter is going through it right now.
Is there enough smoke? I think if Jake is going to – and that's the thing about Jake. I think it should be noted. Like, he's just passing along the chatter, right? Like, he's not definitively saying what Toronto is or is not going to do. You guys know my stance. I know it may not be everybody's favorite stance, but, like, Portland doesn't get nice things. I've taken myself there mentally. If Jake's throwing this out there, I'm going to believe that there is, even if it's a percentage chance that they can get him. Now, there's a couple interesting tidbits here. One, I love everything you dissect about him because seeing him play last year, I think in an ideal world, that's the kind of player Portland's eyeing, right? It's the proven experience of a 24-year-old player who
NBA Finals winner,
who actually contributed on that team, and he was like 21 when he did it. I don't know if he's ever going to get to Kawhi status. That's like another level to me. But if he could be like that secondary tier just below where he can like flirt and or make an all-star game, I think you got something you've been looking for years. I still, despite the reporting from Jake, and it's not a shot at him, I still have a hard time seeing Toronto really wanting to shop it versus saying Tatum Brown worked. Can we make Scottie OG work and what that means for our future? I found it interesting. There was already a trade scenario that was thrown out there, and I want to say March with OG as potential landings. Or no, this was actually May. I'm sorry, but it was what the deal could potentially look like on Portland's end, but on Jake's side, not only is it OG, he kind of cites Jeremy Grant, and it's not an either one. He's almost painting a picture as if their goal would be operate and go get Jeremy Grant
after
and OG and still slide them in. Now that's an interesting starting lineup you got yourself there. You're a little short, but I'm not interested, right?
You would have the best forward tandem probably since '99.
You'd have Grant, you'd have OG, you'd have Ant, and you'd have Dame
and Nurk.
I don't know, but that's what I don't know. I don't think Nurk goes to Toronto or anything, but like let's just keep that open for argument's sake. Those are 4 of your 5 guys. And is that winning you a championship? Well, no, but damn it, is that an improvement?
That's a better team than they've had at any time in the Lillard era outside of the 2015 team, where I think that team is better just because the best player on that team that year, LaMarcus, was incredible.
I do want to give the group that got to the West Finals, even if things lined up, I want to give them that credit. What I'll say, though, is on paper, it's a more versatile situation than I think Dame has ever had. And that would create what hopefully would be some added depth as well, given that would be your starting lineup.
Yeah, let's address one of the things that you brought up there. The next paragraph in Jake's article. 2 sources with knowledge of the dynamic told BR that Anunoby has not directly expressed discontent with his situation with the Raptors. Perhaps the conversation around him has been driven more by external interest in acquiring the fifth-year forward's services. So, and this is the same thing that we've talked about really for the last couple months, is that it's going to require pressure. The Raptors are not going to trade a very good player on a very good contract for nothing. But Masai has not made his bones being an asshole. If all of a sudden OG and Clutch are gonna start rattling sabers and causing problems, I don't think he just cuts bait. But it's hard for me to find a team that's going to be able to give more than what the Blazers can that answers more of their needs. Mm-hmm. And for all everybody keeps asking, what do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be? I think it's going to be a combination of 7 and Hart or 7 and Little.
So I saw this, and I just want to throw it out because, Bleacher Report had the story with Jake. Andy Bailey added it and just threw out a package. Just your thoughts. I don't know where Toronto would be on this, but it'd be OG for Nas, Keon Johnson, the 7th pick, and the 2022 second-round pick that comes via Memphis. And
then Portland would get back. I think I saw that one. They got OG and Toronto second, right?
Let me go through it. From what I just saw, I think it's just OG. You're just basically giving up multiple draft picks.
I could be talked into Portland giving up even 2 firsts for OG, but you would get only one of the kids in that situation.
Right.
And even then, I'd have to get Toronto. I think Toronto has their second round pick is like number 33, which is essentially a first round pick. That'd have to come back.
Yeah, that's not an awful pick to have in your arsenal.
Like, you can find it's a non-guaranteed deal basically when you get to that point, which is why they're
roll the dice.
Right. And this is what I was expecting, was to get some pushback on whether it's Hart or Little. Listen, I like both those players. As a human being, I love Nasir Little. I want him to get healthy. But again, if you're talking about the basketball side of things, it is not his skill. It is not his work ethic. It is not that stuff. It is health. And if you're the Portland Trailblazers and you're trying to compete right now, I think they would lean towards, well, that's not true, because under this group, I think they might value Little more than they do Hart. I think previously, or I think in the past, they would have gone with the upside of this, or in the past they would have gone for the known quantity in Josh Hart, whereas now I think maybe Cronin would lie towards the upside of what Nasir Little could be. So that's why I think I go towards them trading, being more willing to trade Josh Hart, but also contractually, if they wanted to still get Jeremy Grant, Brandon, you trade Josh Hart so that the TPE stays alive.
Yep.
So you put those two and then it's a straight salary swap for OG, and you still have the TPE available. They would have to put something else in there. I think you need about $2 million to get to where the 125 or 150% is there. But the other side of this is that for Portland, that would keep the TPE open and kind of address what you were talking about, which is, let's say that now they take that 2025 pick, Keon Johnson, Bledsoe, send that out to Detroit, and now you have your powder's gone. That is it. But remember, I think it was a month ago or so, somebody asked, like, what would like your A+ offseason be? And I said, listen, man, it's OG Anunoby and Grant. That's an A+. Home run. That is stepping up to the plate, 3-2 count. They think they're gonna gas one up and inside, and you pull those hands through and you rip it over the fence. Because their back's against the wall. Because if they screw this up, they are in trouble. I want to emphasize that because I feel like it is the Blazers, as much as there's so many people that are pessimistic as far as like what they have done and where they're at.
You can't blame them for being beaten down, Dan.
No, and I don't. But they have the opportunity, and this is where I keep, again, I'm not the optimist, but this is the opportunity that is available to them when you're talking about like what could happen. And Dimitri points out it's the Portland Clutch team. Yes, welcome to Clutch West.
Yeah.
You know what being a Clutch team does for you? Brings you some pretty good players.
And that's the hope, right? You want Clutch to trust you enough to say, hey, we want that guy. Why don't you go float that rumor? And what does Clutch do? Goes and talks to writers nationally and flirts with it. I still have a hard time wrapping my brain around the fact that they would punt on him. And I don't think Masai, you said it well, I don't think Masai's out here like, oh, I want to trade OG.
No, they don't.
The pressure would have to come from OG's thing. The only thing that I got, and it's a bit of a pushback here, DeAndre, OG, I'm not saying Portland doesn't have a
financially
real shot, or not saying that, you know, they won't be traded. But I'm also looking at the calendar. I'm like, it's May 31st, and neither one of those players is playing in the playoffs. Like, there's an element that I think with this league that sometimes you just get certain situations that present themselves where players are bored. And, you know, people want things to not stay the same. They want to continue to hear that they're going to have that opportunity. They're going to get paid. They're going to get this. They're going to get that. And they're just bored because they're not playing real basketball that has value right now. So, I think it's still a May.
Do you want to go get the water bucket so you can continue pouring it on, or?
Yeah, sure, but like I'm okay being this guy. I cannot believe
it's normally me. It's normally me. I know
we've completely flipped in who we are, and I want OG Anunoby here. I think people that would poo-poo that and just be like, okay, you got OG, like you're still not winning a championship, folks. There's nothing they can do to win a championship.
Adding Giannis to this team might get them close, but even then.
They would win the goddamn championship if they added Giannis. Let's be honest here. Dame and Giannis, yes, please, all day. But like sans that, you have to build it as big as you can and then add to it by winning and attracting other pieces.
And you do that by getting good pieces to begin with.
Yes.
OG Anunoby is a very, very good piece on a salary-controlled deal.
That's a great contract.
And even if you overpay for Grant, you have to look at it this way. If you overpay for Grant, but you save money on Ant and OG, it's kind of a wash.
Yeah.
And you've got Nasir Little, you've got some vet minimums you play with. You go over the cap, obviously. You use Joe Ingles for his bird rights, and you go and trade him at the trade deadline, add another wing to your roster on an expiring deal or whatever that you can kind of figure out to add to your team. And now you go into the summer again, you don't have any money, but you look at the roster, and maybe some guys are like, you know what? I'll take a little bit of money, a little bit less money. I'll take a TPMLE to go to Portland and be their 6th or 7th man. You know, and then all of a sudden things just start to fill out. Or Jusuf Nurkic gets traded for a different big, and now they have a little bit more room to play with. Or you use Nurk to go get a different big. Like there's just so many. But the thing is they have to land this. That's the problem. I've seen a lot of people say, sign and trade Nurk for OG, 7th for Ayton. You need more than that for Ayton.
Phoenix is going to want a nice little return package.
They're going to need more than 7. But here's the other thing: is as far as like the alternatives for Toronto. This is not me poo-pooing them, but this is why Portland might make sense. Portland's one of the few teams that wants OG right now that has draft capital that the Toronto Raptors would want, and that is a lottery pick, and that would allow them to go get either a creator like a Dyson Daniels, who is a downhill rim pressure kind of guy, or solve their big problem by going in and getting Jalen Duren or Mark Williams. Or, hell, they could go get, Tari Eason or one of the other big wings. They can go get Sohan if that's who they want. Yeah. But it gives them options. And I'm going to derail it a little bit. I have already heard, as far as the NBA draft is concerned, expect there to be some fireworks. Expect there to be a guy that you do not expect to be in the top 4. Or not even the top 4, the top 2, top 3. I've heard from more than a few people that Jaden Ivey might move into that spot.
Which, it wouldn't shock me because there's a lot of people ranting and raving about him. I mean, this is what puts me – I continue to go back and forth here because, yes, I want OG Anunoby. Yes, I want DeAndre Ayton. But this is what kind of intrigues me. Like, is there any conceivable path? It's not necessarily about the trade asset and go getting that, the valuable vet guy, even though OG's 24 and DeAndre's 23, but they're veteran enough. Can you move up? If you're going to have wild movement, unpredictable picks here, Jaden Ivey just as
does one of the bigs fall and all of a sudden somebody's coming asking.
I'm just wondering. Like that's why I'm not ready to say like if you whiff on OG and you don't get DeAndre, like I'm kind of mentally accepting that. I'm more like, what can you do with that draft pick? I'm allowing myself to be more open to the possibilities of multiple avenues here. It's not to me as dead set as, well, do you get DeAndre or bust, or you get OG or bust. those are obviously, I think, the top of your wish list, right?
100%.
You want a player of that caliber. But if that pick paired with something else can move you from 7 to 4 or 7 to 3, and just for argument's sake, you got my interest. And I'm not expecting them to take this title leap. It's more of, what are they in 2 to 3 years? How does Cronin build this thing out for the next 2 to 3 years? Because if Dame is fully committed, if you're signing Ant to the extension, you're getting Nurk on the extension, Danny, you and I know that this is going to have to be a build that, yes, we want him to be great next year, but we're kind of eyeing more 2024, maybe even a little 2025-ish, where Dame's on the age ladder. But, like, you know what? You've paired the
rest
right
of the roster
looks
right. Correct.
Yes.
Basically following the Phoenix Suns model. That's
exactly kind of what I've been throwing out for months now, and I continue to kind of stay on that lane. If you do not get OG Anunoby or DeAndre Ayton this year, you're kind of aiming, I think, if you're Joe Cronin, for that.
So let's walk through. I kind of said I derailed there a little bit. Let's walk through the situations for the Toronto Raptors and putting OG Anunoby on the market. There will be offers if that actually happens. I've talked to a few people, and here's the thing that I've been told. As it pertains to Anunoby in Toronto, the likelihood of Toronto trading him in conference is slim to none. They don't want to see him in conference.
Get rid of him. Get him out of there. Give him to the West. Yeah.
That's kind of where they are with that, as far as I know. The other side of this is, I have been told that Rudy Gobert is unabashedly on the trading block, and they are looking to trade him. And that is a conversation that the Toronto Raptors have had, was looking at Gobert. The problem is, the Raptors don't have the contracts necessary to really make that happen without pooling together multiple players.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for that to happen, and the same is true for DeAndre Ayton,
sure,
they need to involve a third team. And so that makes things more difficult. Whereas with Portland, it's a 1-to-1 situation, and they can extract the assets they probably need. The other part of this is last year, not this past trade deadline, actually this past trade deadline, and I believe the year before, the Toronto Raptors called the Portland Trailblazers about Jusuf Nurkic. So does that open up another avenue? Now, I don't believe the Blazers would be willing to trade Jusuf Nurkic without having a guarantee of another big coming here. And as far as I understand it, the reason I've died down on the Mo Bamba stuff, I believe he's going to end up in New York. So he's a New York guy.
Why would you?
Because he's a New York guy through and through.
Shit, dude. Like, you be a New York guy anywhere you will play in the goddamn country.
I'm just saying.
Does he know the only way you play in the finals as a Knick is that you were actually on the active roster at one point? Because they've got some crazy streak going where every final since 1947 has had a player that at one time was a New York Knick during the season. I forget the dude's name, but there's a white dude on Boston that was on.
Cornet.
Yes, he was on the Knicks roster 2 years ago. So this streak, that's the only way this streak continued. It's a poverty franchise. Their hockey team is better than them. Everything else in New York is better than them.
Literally every sporting franchise in New York is better than the Knicks.
God bless Bam or Bamba. If he wants to go to New York, be the New York savior guy thing, that's cool. Let me throw this at you. I want to butt in here a little bit, a butt-in-ski.
No, perfect.
So if we're to throw out that hypothetical trade, that Bleacher Report piece together, I don't know if you want to pick and choose little things out of that. Is that enough? Like, if you're Toronto, I read that.
That's a pretty report. Honestly, that's a pretty hefty toll.
But that 7 pick might not be that valuable, right?
It is for them.
It could be
because
we don't know how Masai feels about the draft.
I will say this: there are two things in that draft that they can get at that spot. They can get a shot creator, which they are desperate for, and they can get a big. When are they going to have that draft capital again?
I mean, it's hard to, because they're not going to ever.
They're not going to bottom out like
no,
unless they get hurt like they did last year. They're not going to be in that position.
Because the difference is Masai, and I think he's one of many, but Masai, the Conleys of the world, they view this league, I think, very similar to Neil, of being competitive and making the playoffs does matter. But I think the difference between that breed and that breed is like how you're building as you're on that trajectory. And so, like, Masai is one of the smartest students in this league.
100%.
If that's on the table, then cool. I hope that they can go all in for it because, again, I'd love to have OG as a part of the nucleus here. I'm trying to wrap my brain around it and how this fits for Toronto, because I read that report and my first thought was, I know the contract stuff's huge, and that's probably the biggest factor. If I'm Masai, I'd kind of love to have Rudy. I'd love to just lean all in with this length, this athleticism, this young thing, and have Rudy be the tower of terror in the middle. And I know he's limited offensively, but you see where I'm going with that.
Defensively, they would be an absolute nightmare.
It'd be They were a nightmare this year, and most people didn't know what that roster was. But you knew when you played the Raptors, they're going to be 6'5" to 6'10", lengthy and in your face everywhere.
And even the little guy in VanVleet is a bulldog. Like he's going to
compete. Pest. He's Kyle Lowry 2.0.
He's going to compete his ass off.
Yeah.
And that matters. And so when you look at where the Blazers are and where the Raptors are, it does make sense. And this isn't me just being a homer. You know me. I typically, when I do a trade or I use the trade machine, I give up more than I think they should. That's just kind of how I always look at it. I'm like, I need to piss off both fan bases. That's ultimately where I end up. If you look at that, and here's the other thing I started thinking about. If you're Toronto, your books are really good right now. If you swap OG for a draft pick and a good contract, whether that's Hart, whether that's Little and his RFA status, going into next season's free agency, you are going to be a player when the free agent class is massive. When you have opportunities to add a massive difference maker, or to the ability to facilitate a move because you have the necessary cap space to do so, because you're going to have Barnes on a rookie deal, because you're going to have your draft pick on a rookie deal, you're going to have Nasir Little going into RFA status so you can go into that, or if it's Josh Hart, you've got a guy at a $13 million deal. Like you're in a situation where your books look stupidly good.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's like, nobody really wants to go to Toronto, Hedo Turkoglu, ladies and gentlemen.
I also don't like that. Like, I know Toronto's not sitting here grabbing all the.
It's significantly more metropolitan than Portland.
It's New York, but it's in Canada. Yeah. You've got, let's say what you want about it, but like Drake gets to be in that board meeting, right? He can talk about the appeal of being part of OVO.
It's a pitch.
It's a pitch.
Yeah.
It's a good ass pitch,
yeah.
And they might not get somebody, but it's a good situation, and it's a passionate sports city that loves its basketball team.
You're literally backed by an entire country. It's not just Toronto. You are Canada's basketball team.
Yeah,
from Vancouver to Toronto to Nova Scotia, ladies and gentlemen, they are all Toronto Raptors fans. As
Dude,
crazy
Regina loves it. They're all in.
Kamloops.
Yeah, Kamloops. Yeah.
How many WHL hockey teams cities can I name? Kelowna. But it's a place where I think they can make, and then that's to say that that's the reason they would do this deal. I just find it interesting, and it's part of why I've talked OG up so much for the last 2 months. For everybody who doesn't know, OG as well as Jeremy Grant are both repped by Clutch. Nurkic is not the only Trailblazer repped by Clutch. Chauncey Billups is also repped by Clutch. So in the past, you had, if you go Google Mark Bartelstein clients, you will see a list of also ran Portland Trailblazers. It's going to blow your mind how many Mark Bartelstein clients have been on this roster over the last 6 years.
Him and Neil were best friends, man.
That is who the Blazers used to fill the roster. It just I would much rather trade that out. And don't get me wrong, Bartelstein's one of the most powerful agents in the NBA. But they never got top billing Mark Bartelstein clients. They got the lower tier clients.
Sure.
I'd much rather swap that out for the middle tier Clutch clients.
The Clutch clients are nice.
Give me those middle tier Clutch clients. And
because those are high end for a lot of other agencies.
Exactly. Yeah. Gary Trent Jr. also Clutch. So just as a little reminder here. So, but there is a connection to pull that thread through of like why that makes sense and kind of what kind of relationships are being developed. There's also this is probably Clutch drumming up some stuff, because at bare minimum, you're showing that OG Anunoby, everybody talks about how good his contract is. Well, if somebody's got a good contract, what does that mean, Brandon?
It means they want to get...
Well, they're underpaid.
I was going to say they want to get paid. They want an increase.
That third year is a player option. I don't think he's taking it.
No.
I think, barring any injuries, OG Anunoby is not taking that option, because he's going to be a max player. or near max player.
So,
I should say rookie max caliber, not max.
Where would you put percentages in? Right now, today, as we sit.
I'd say probably 40%.
That's so much higher than I thought you were going to go. I was going to sit at like the 15, 12%.
Okay, you know me. I don't oversell this stuff.
I know. And look, I'll give you a lot of credit. You mentioned OG months ago, and we got dragged by a random SB Nation Raptors writer. Was like, they would never consider it. And maybe he'll ultimately end up being right, or they'll end up ultimately being right. But it's interesting that we fast forward to now, and they're like, hey, Scottie, didn't like that pick. He took all my touches, took all my minutes, took my shine. And they're now sitting here going, do we want to offer this dude the max contract when this incredible 4-year, $72 million deal has kind of run its course? It's a lot to think about from Masai, because they do have to balance future free agency with young, cheap asset you could potentially get.
Which is
Mark
something
Williams,
they've done a fantastic job of.
Mark Williams could be a great fit. Mark Williams could be a great fit for them. That big they've been looking for. He's super lengthy, super athletic. He had really good showings at Duke in multiple big moment games. Like that maybe
they go on the upside of Duren. Like there's opportunities
18-year-old
there for them.
Center. Yes, absolutely.
And the reason I bring those up, and people are like, well, why wouldn't the Blazers consider them? Because they're on different timelines. They're not on OG Pascal timeline anymore. The Toronto Raptors are on Scottie Barnes' timeline. That's what they're on. So they're going to be a good team for the next couple of years. There's no doubt about that. Barnes is going to get better and better, and it's going to go from Pascal's team to Scottie's team very quickly. And that's not like a thing like I think Pascal's washed. I think he's a hell of a player. I just think that very quickly it's going to be very much like LaMarcus and Dame, where it was your team for a year, maybe two.
Right.
And then you're going to go, we drafted this stud rookie in the front end of the lottery, and ladies and gentlemen, he is him.
Yeah.
And we're going to shift towards him. And when you do that, you are going to alienate some veteran players. It happened with LaMarcus. It may not happen with Pascal, but it definitely looks like it's on the board for OG.
Go, because Pascal at least made All-NBA. Like he at least got on third team All-NBA, whereas like OG, I thought OG had a good season, but not many people were talking about OG outside of the Toronto bubble, the sphere where they're breaking everything down Raptors. It felt like after that, people more talked about Scottie and the way he kind of came onto the scene, especially late in the season, and basically stole Rookie of the Year from Evan Mobley, who unfortunately for him, he got banged up. He missed some games at the end. Toronto kind of got in that playoff spot. Barnes was a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching him play when they played Portland, but sometimes that's how it shakes out. So it might not be Pascal like many people thought it could be. Ends up being a guy like OG who's looking up. He's like, oh, Pascal's 6'8". Oh, Scottie's 6'7". I'm 6'7". We're kind of got a run on here of how are my touches going to be here. And that, to segue to something I wanted to bring up on this pod, because again, I know nothing about this third assistant general manager. So I don't know whether to clap or just shrug my shoulder and say, I hope for the best. Let me ask you this question, because I brought this up on my radio show. I think this is an important thing. I think realistic Danny wants to say, it'll sort itself out. Don't worry. But panic Brandon is already thinking about the scenario of you have Grant, you have OG, you've got Ant, you got Dame. Let's just for argument's sake that and Nurk doesn't get moved. If that's your five, and it's a slightly smaller five than some teams you face because of your four situation at 6'8", what is that pecking order of touches, of scoring, of ego? Because I'm not suggesting that OG has an ego or that Jeremy is a bad teammate, or I don't know what Ant's going to be next year with all of these kind of dudes. If they can make a big move like that, we clearly know this is Dame's team. But then when you go to slots 2, 3,
I think slot 2 is pretty much guaranteed too.
And see, that's where I'm kind of wondering, are we sure? Because I think instinctually you want to say
yes,
it's number 1, but 24-year-old disgruntled guy who wanted more touches and shine coming over to agree to be the third on a Portland team that didn't make the playoffs?
Here's where I go with this, and this is where I will defer to Chauncey at least for what he wants to do.
Okay.
They want to play a brand of basketball that's more like the Clippers, which means Dame having... I put a tweet out about this the other day. It was kind of framing up like this exact situation. Like adding players to this roster based on usage and like where they would fit in. Dame has been around 30% usage rate for basically his career, which it's too high.
He's a higher end one, yeah.
But he needed to do that for them to be effective. I don't think people really realized just how much burden Dame carried offensively until he was shut down. It was like,
until he got out of the first round of the playoffs, and he's like, oh, everybody just double teams me now the entire time. This is so much fun.
But then you saw guys who just couldn't take advantage.
Yeah.
When you look at the Blazers right now, I think ultimately you need to get Dame's usage down from 30% closer to like 26%. It may not sound like a lot, but over 82 games, that is a ton.
Mm-hmm.
You get Anthony Simon's usage around 24, 25%. Basically splitting time or splitting touches with Dame. Them basically controlling the offense as the primary playmakers, table setters at like roughly 50%, which is about on par with what Dame and CJ were. I should dial that back because it's a little bit less than Dame and CJ were, which is kind of where I'm getting to this. But then Jusuf Nurkic is a guy that has shown that he wants more touches, and he got happier when he got fed more. That's not a secret. Like, he went from getting like less than 3 post-ups a game where he got over 9. And I'm not talking about touches on the block. I'm talking like used a possession. You get roughly 100 possessions in a game. So 10% of your used possessions were just straight Nurkic post-ups. That's not happening going forward.
No, that's gone.
Like, that's going down to like back to 4. Like, we'll give you maybe 1 or 2 more, big fella.
You start the game giving him the first 2.
The LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yes. Hey, big guy, get it going. Hey. Okay.
Oh, and then you come back to him when you come out. You start the half. Hey, here's your touches, and that's like those are like your post-up touches. And when a game gets close, and maybe he's got it going, you go to him. If he doesn't, well, then the pick and roll's coming, ladies and gentlemen.
But he needs to get back to vintage Nurk. Sorry to interrupt you there, man.
No, go.
He needs to get back to the Nurkic, and we've talked about, is this even possible? But like, for the argument's sake of roster construction, if he's not going anywhere, this is your center, and you go get some pieces or a dude. I mean, he's not going to maybe like it, but like, he's just going to ultimately have to do what he did when he got to Portland. And I know he was a different player and the style in which they played, and he was kind of a mammoth down low who had his back to the basket. Bro, you need to take that and you need to apply that to offensive rebounds, and you need to really be the cleanup guy. Yeah. You need to take it as much as you can possibly can, and just
because he's a hell of an offensive rebounder.
He's a hell of an offensive rebounder. His biggest problem to us is taking the ball down. Like, keep it up, dunk it. Like, he needs to be doing that kind of stuff. If I'm Chauncey, I'd imagine that is what they're screaming for. Is like, bro, I know you don't get the touches you want, but you can get touches without us actually designing touches for you. This is how.
And I think that's where I was going to go with this, is like the idea of like the offense not being so pick and roll heavy. They have to find that sweet spot, because they tried to do this cute thing. Like Chauncey was going to, Chauncey said we're going to do, this way, and it's not going to be just pick and roll. And then they realized, well, we don't have the personnel to do it the other way, because you only have like 3 guys who can dribble, pass, and shoot. So
for sure,
we're going to go back to the pick and roll, because that's what this team is built for. And I think they're going to, by adding players who have different skill sets, like you look at Anunoby, I'm not going to go full box score on it, but he's a guy I think he's like 17, 6, and 4. Like, I don't think it's going to wow you because it doesn't jump off the page, but he's a 48%, I think, field goal percentage, 37% from 3. Like, capable, but he blows things up defensively. And I think that trade-off is pretty impressive. And I want to get a question in here quick. Ben T says, or asks, usage is percent of possessions a player touches the ball. No. Usage rate is possessions a player ends with either a pass, or with either a shot, a turnover, or a foul, or a free throw generated. So basically, tracked events. That's like, so if you want to take a look at how much a player touches the ball, there is some of that tracking data available on the public side. Like, I think Dame touches a ball in the front court something like 80 times a game, which is way up there. It's a ton. But that's just kind of like to give you guys the super, or like the top level nerdy stuff behind it, of like what that wants to be. It's an opportunity. It's great. I got the Raptors fans in the chat now talking about how OG doesn't want to be traded. Listen, Clutch your pearls all you want, folks. I don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, this isn't us telling you that OG is pissed and he's
no. It's instead it's Jake Fischer making up rumors.
Look, some people have that belief that reporters just throw stuff against the wall. The noise is loud right now.
Yeah, I've been hearing about it for 2 months, but it's definitely not something that's out there.
I was going to say, let's see if it even happens. But, I don't blame Raptor fan. I wouldn't want to lose OG. If we were doing a Raptor podcast and a Blazer podcast, I'd be screaming from the heavens.
For the love of God, do not do this. But
do not do this.
But at the same time, if you do, you better get what you need out of it.
Yep.
Crypto IK says, before I derailed there, said 17 points per game is great for your third or fourth option. And that's what I was getting to. As long as he's getting touches, which I think in Toronto, part of the problem is it's not that it's somebody getting touches. It's basically like the younger version of him, a kind of do-it-all forward that he was kind of looked at. No, he doesn't have the creation or the dribble drive instincts or capabilities of Scottie Barnes. But I think like seeing the young guy after OG took the cheaper contract, getting that kind of show, getting that burn, I think it's a little bit of a weird spot, right, where he doesn't get to get optimized. In Portland, I very much think he's calling him your third option is not something that's, I think, out of the question. Now, that could change on a given night if Nurk's got it rolling, or if they get a guy like Grant, or they get somebody in that range, kind of how that works. It's an interesting position for Portland to be in, because I think that they not only can optimize him on offense, they'll optimize the hell out of him defensively, because
they're going to need
him.
Relying on that.
And I think maybe that might be a negative thing. If you're looking at it from OG's perspective, I got to go to Portland and I got to carry the defense. Shit, that's
and my touches are going to be a little more, but like I'd still be kind of a number 3. Like, this is what I'm saying is,
does he want to go the Jeremy Grant route and go to a bad team and get more touches? Because that's out there for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, but like if I'm Masai, I'm still trying to massage this thing back to being okay.
100%.
Here's the thing: he's going to probably turn down. You're not wrong on that player option part, but next year is year 2 on that contract, correct? So you have one more season. I'm doing what I can, and I'm trying to get this relationship to be cordial and say, hey, man, let's do this one more time. And even if by the trade deadline we get to February and you're still kind of feeling this way, maybe we're not quite where we thought we would be in the standings, and Scottie is maybe continuing to take and develop a lot of what you want, man, if you're still feeling that way, we'll revisit this, and I will look to trade you for the best package for yourself and for myself. But if I'm Masai, again, I've held this stance. I don't understand why I would want to make that move. I would want to definitely kick this can down the road and say, hey, you're 24. We've won a championship here. Like, let's give this some time to breathe.
Does that also backfire? You've won a championship here.
It definitely
is it time for you to go somewhere else?
Definitely could. But I want really good 6-7 players. We didn't have a lot of them here in Portland. I'd imagine Toronto's eyeing this potentially as, I want as many lengthy, good players as I can get. OG's definitely one of them. I don't know where tier most people would have him, but damn, if Portland picked up OG Anunoby, they came out of the offseason with OG Anunoby and a couple other pieces to fill out the roster. I'm pretty damn happy as a fan, because I didn't think that was going to be a possibility going into the offseason.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really disagree. Allgood says if Melo could get 12 shots a game with this team, OG can get 12 to 15. While I agree with you, Melo was given carte blanche offensively, so.
I also don't want to do the game of what did he average. Like 17 is good, but like 17 in the right.
Like he's getting 14 and a half shots a game in Toronto. I very much think he can get that in Portland and then some, but also be have more free reign to play within a system.
Well, and I think he'd get a lot more relief from his guard play. Not that VanVleet is not a good player, but Dame is a different type of
player. But yeah, that's
right?
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought up Dame, because that's exactly where I was going to go with this. The thing I have not brought up, because I don't think it's quite as tangible for people to really understand, the guy that Dame wants the most, is what I have been told, is OG. That is his number one ask. Not only that, he is very good friends with OG. Is that the thing that gets the push?
I think it's a big part of it.
And I'm not talking about that from the Blazers' perspective. I think the Blazers very much have OG as, like, if you're looking at your offseason move board, I would venture to say that OG is number one on that board.
Yes.
I'd say DeAndre Ayton's right there. Then I'd probably go John Collins. Then probably using the draft pick. Then Jeremy Grant. Like, that's kind of the pecking order I think it would probably fall into. I don't think, again, I will reiterate this for anybody else who wants to talk about this aggregated later. I do not believe the Portland Trailblazers will trade the 7th overall pick in this draft for Jeremy Grant. I do not believe that's ever going to happen.
I will want to punt on the season at that point if that's the direction that they take.
I think they'll use that pick.
I'll be so disappointed.
Do I think that they would be willing to trade the 2025 Milwaukee pick? Yes, 100%. Plus Keon, plus Eric Bledsoe. I could absolutely see them doing that for Jeremy Grant. This draft, this lottery pick, hell no. Hell no.
Because 2025 could end up kicking in. Giannis leaves Milwaukee, and people go, "Oh, can you believe they traded that years ago?" Bro, we don't live in that kind of world. The NBA is a now business. Like, you cannot play what's that pick in 3 years going to be? You got to use that asset. And if that becomes Jeremy Grant, then so be it. Like, we'll look back and maybe we'll go, hey, that wasn't quite the great gamble, was it, considering what that pick is? But that's neither here nor there. Like, you have to play the
scared money don't make money.
No, scared money don't make money game. You can't play that. You got to be in on got to take risk, and that's a bit of a risk, but I'd be willing to do it.
Which is a nice way to transition here. The Portland Trailblazers signed their third assistant general manager in Sergi Oliva. The Blazers have now filled out their contingent of assistant general managers that they had under Neil O'Shea. I saw a lot of people memeing the Blazers. How many assistant GMs are they going to hire? Well, they're going to hire the exact same number that they had for the last 10 years, which Branch, Rosenberry, and Cronin have been there forever. Cronin wasn't in that role until I think 2 years ago, though. But they had somebody. I'm trying to think who else they had that role. They had Neil was the GM at that point in time, and his transition to president of basketball operations, a self-appointed title, I think created another opportunity there. But the Blazers have brought in now 3 very different assistant GMs. Most recently, Oliva. I asked around about him because I had heard his name a few times, but I was not intimately familiar with him. He is, the way it is explained to me, he is a guy who is very well respected in the NBA, but his ability to marry both analytics and kind of eye test is second to none. Like, he bridges the gap between those two. Very, very well respected. He was... I'm forgetting the title. I had the notes, and when I grabbed the puppy, I forgot to grab my notes. But not their director of analytics, but I think there was the lead analytics guy with the Utah Jazz. That's what
he was doing on the bench?
No, behind the scenes with the Utah Jazz. Yeah. As their assistant
I thought I read he was an assistant coach.
No, he was their.
I thought he was a Lawrence Frank. He was going from bench to front office, super smart dude.
He was the VP of strategy for the Sixers. But yes, he was on the bench. But he was
for the Jazz.
Yes. Yeah. But the role was kind of like
a hybrid.
Yes.
Got you. Okay.
So again, like that's why I said marrying the basketball side of things with the analytics side of things. Also, they brought in Andre Patterson, who was with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was on the communication side of things, but also a former NBA player. Again,
yeah.
There's a trend here, and then their forward-thinking kind of way they went about this obviously was bringing in Mike Schmitz, who is the international scouting side of things, as well as scouting in general, but very much the international scouting side of Draft Express for ESPN. So you look at who the Blazers have brought in, and all of a sudden it starts to make sense. Like, very specific roles and targets for them to go about things. And I think it's very, very interesting what they're trying to do and like where they're trying to shore up deficiencies. And everybody I've talked to about the most recent hires, we talked about Patterson a little bit when that happened. Was that back in February?
It was way back there, yeah.
But he falls in the same category. Everybody I talked to is like, those are good hires. This is going to sound like such a dick move, but I'm going to say it anyways. When the Blazers announced their assistant coaching staff last season, I got a lot of text messages and a lot of DMs like, that's it, huh?
Scotty Brooks did not get a lot of people excited.
No. And not even locally, that was nationally, I got that. Like, ooh,
yeah,
Chauncey's first year on the job. That's what you're going with.
yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't have cheaped out. And that is not to disparage like Anisha Curry or any of those guys. Like, I don't want it to seem like that because that's how it's going to come across. But what it looks like here, while they may be going cheaper by giving guys first opportunities, I think what Cronin is doing here is taking some risks, but also being more progressive and forward thinking about who they're bringing in. And I think that kind of matches the style of what he is looking for while hunting players, which is taking big swings and maybe taking some risks on some guys that could really do some things and show some things going forward for this organization.
Well, I think the tough thing for this organization is you're dealing with so much history, so much beaten down history, so much disappointment in certain regards. The one thing I've noticed about this, because we talked about Schmitz, we did the pod with talking about the hire of Schmitz and how we liked it because everybody we knew and I'd interviewed him and he's worked his tail off. We don't know if that's going to be ultimately a great hire, right? We're going off of what just
the proof comes in 2 years.
Exactly. We'll get an idea of where this is going. I do think there's an element of what you said there, and I think it's an important one. They are going the first opportunity route with some of these people, which I think does indicate a financial strategy.
Certainly.
Clearly, that was mandated from the top.
The Trailblazers historically have gone cheap on assistant coaches. That's not just with Chauncey. That's what Terry thoughts too. But they've been successful in creating like good coaching trees out of their young assistants.
And I know they haven't gotten head coaching gigs, but like Jay Triano is in the league, right? You had Vanderpool is in the league. Tibbetts in the league.
Like all those guys have all interviewed for head coaching jobs. Like they're right there.
They're good coaches. Some of them might be career assistants. We don't know. But like my point is, I don't have an ultimate judgment on the latest hire. I'll say, hey, they rounded it out. That's great. Now we know exactly who they're building with, and everybody's going to get on the same page. This is your group
going forward.
This is who it is, right? These are the decision makers in the room. This is the next wave of the Joe Cronin in the world, and now he gets to run the ship. What I don't, and I'll push back on, is I understand not everything has gone Portland's way, but what we see a lot is when new leadership comes in play, we totally space and forget what previous leadership had led to. Now, again, I'm not blaming every single circumstance right now today on Neil. What I'm trying to say is I don't like that the reaction from some on these hires is just like, is this better? I mean, I think you're misplacing and projecting a lot of Neil frustrations and a lot of the way the Neil stuff kind of unfolded at the end there. And I think you're putting that on unproven commodities. Now, they may prove to not be great commodities, but damn it, can we just say, all right, great, now the staff's put together. Let's
in very much the same manner of like, let's wait until end of free agency. Let's wait until August 1st when Cronin has had the opportunity to do something.
Yes, instead of like, I've seen, I've heard the take, I've seen the take. Well, you based on reactions, you think they got the greatest people in the world. No, I think you just look at it and you say, I like that guy, or, oh, I know something about that person, or, oh, people are saying this and that about that person. Maybe it is going to be an entirely different era and different swings and different chance taking. I don't want to be beholden to how the last era ended and project that onto this one and not give this a legitimate shot to say, maybe it will be different. Maybe it will be significantly better. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not really going to add to that because I think you just hit a home run.
Thank you. I thought it was a soft double, but I ran it out.
Yeah, but you did. That was some Tommy Edman-esque speed. Let me go ahead and throw my Cardinal in there for you real quick. I've seen a few people say that OG has only played in 50 or less games over the last 2 years, and I just threw in OG's injury history, his injury report history for the last 2 years. Injury management, injury recovery, health and safety protocols, finger. Before that, calf, rest, health and safety protocols, rest, calf, knee, eye, appendix. Oh, now we're in 2019. So this whole
So COVID hit a lot.
And
a lot of COVID situations.
Injury management, and I think he had a broken finger. Other than his calf, where impacted like a 2-month period in 2021 which I'll tell you right now, if you have a calf or a hamstring in an NBA season, it doesn't get healthy. It's just about managing it, which is what they did. And I think he had a broken finger. Other than that, he's had injury management, health and safety protocols. Like he's fine. I'm not worried about his injury history. Now, if that had said knee after having knee surgery in college, I would going yipe, and I'd be running for the hills. But it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. Last little bit of news before we get out of here. The Portland Trailblazers had their first pre-draft workouts, and it's a bunch of dudes most of you don't know. And if you tell me you know them, you're lying. You're 100%
There's one
lying.
that I knew. There's
one that you knew.
There's one that I knew.
Maybe two.
Yeah.
Maybe two in Champagney. But one, and I found this very interesting, if nothing more than just a just one of those, the very first workouts post-combine, and the Blazers managed to snag Dyson Daniels for the very first workout, who is mocked anywhere between 5 and 12 or 5 and 13. I have to double check. I thought I saw him at 13.
He's risen a lot in the last 2 weeks.
We talked about this about a month ago, that the guy that I had heard through back channels that was kind of like the guy that's going to be like right where Portland's picking is Dyson Daniels. And I was like, that's interesting. I would not have seen that coming. His stats for G League Ignite did not look great, but if you go back to the Rising Stars game, this is what everybody keeps going back to, is being out on the floor against NBA players. He showed flashes of absolute brilliance. You're like, holy shit, that's an NBA player. And he's a kid. And then he goes to the combine, and ladies and gentlemen, he measures. And he measures well. He measures a full 6'7.5". I was told he grew basically to 2.5 inches in the last year, I think is what it was. I think he measured like 6'4.5" at the last time he got measured, or 6'5". And so like people were shocked that he had like, now that we have it on tape that we have it on paper that he's that big. It's like, oh damn. Now you go from like, oh, that's a good size like Zach LaVine guard to now you're getting like Sean Livingston's territory, particularly when you talk about his play type, his archetype, his skill level, like the things that he does really well on the floor. He's got size, he's got length, he's got like a 6'10", 6'11" wingspan, he's got athleticism, but he gets after it defensively. And I'm telling you right now, Brandon, if you're being talked about as a Sean Livingston type, that is a really, really, really good player. And I think people think of like late career Sean Livingston and like, oh, that's a good role player. I'm talking like Sean Livingston, like pre-knee going backwards.
Yeah, well.
Like the ability to dribble, pass, create, put rim pressure on at that size while being not just a good defender, a plus defender. He's probably the best defender that's not a wing in the draft.
I would argue he's probably played I know some of these dudes played high level colleges and conferences.
He's played the highest level basketball.
He's played the highest level of basketball of anybody that's in this elite top 15 category. That the Livingston one is crazy because Livingston prior to that injury,
was devastating.
It's still one of those like, if God exists and I die, I'd love to just go, hey, random question. I know
how good would Sean have been?
I know we just talked about Lincoln and really how that went down. Can you show me a scenario where Sean Livingston doesn't get hurt and what that career looks like? Could have been extraordinary. He was really one of my favorite young players, and then that thing happened. It's one of the grossest injuries you'll see. Ended up having a great career for himself. If that's where we're going with it, I would argue that's only going to continue to rise with intrigue and teams, because especially in this draft, this is what I said about this draft. We keep saying it's 3 deep, it's 2 deep, it's 4 deep.
No, it's not.
Man, when you have a draft like this, expect a little chaos and a little whoa.
He went there, yeah.
When you don't have elite, like high-end level talent past 2 guys, and some think that's what it is. I think you have to talk yourself into, if you're an organization, well, I'm going to take a swing with this guy then, because who's to say Dyson Daniels doesn't become Sean Livingston 2.0 versus Mark Williams out of Duke might not ever be what we hope.
Sure.
Right?
Because nobody's mocking guys with like their negative, like their worst case scenarios. You're mocking guys on their best because
on their high end,
because they're 18 to 20-year-old kids, and it's not an exact science. But if you're looking at that, that's kind of what that's the upside that you're looking for. The question is, can he shoot the ball? Which heretofore he has not been able to do, but neither was Sean Livingston. And here's the thing: if you look at today's NBA, is it a good thing to have 6'7" creators who can defend?
Yes. It's probably on my top of the wish list. Like,
it's
I
probably the most valuable
guy.
thing in the NBA is to be a 6'7" guy who can dribble and pass.
And if you could play just a little bit of defense, you're like, oh, hey, he's not the worst defender either. I'm like, sign me the hell up.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
No, you start getting into, I can see this guy being a very good defender in the NBA. And you throw in like, oh, no, he can actually dribble the ball, not a little bit. And I saw somebody in here ask, like, can he be like a Ben Simmons light? That's kind of what I'm talking about when I say Sean Livingston, because Livingston's kind of the smaller version of that, in that 6'7", but like he's a primary creator. You could, with that, and this is where I say, like, a team, let's use the 76ers as a team. If you threw Dyson Daniels on a team where you have Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry, now you can have another creator on the floor with two guys who shoot the living hell out of the ball, and he's playing at plus size. Or you could put him as your 2 guard and have him be your primary creator, but hide the smaller Seth Curry on your point guard, which allows you to have now a plus defender on the floor. And those are the kind of situations where, again, if you're looking at a Toronto, where VanVleet is a plus defender, but he's 5'11". Now, if all of a sudden the guy next to him is also a primary creator, but he gives you a crap ton of rim pressure, and he's 6'7" and a plus defender, what that does for how you can deploy your defense changes significantly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what... It's hard to find those guys. It's easy to find a guy with size. It's easy to find a guy who can defend. It's hard to find a guy who can defend, has the size, and can create. That's like the... give me the Zelda triangle, man. That's your Triforce right there. Like, that's just, those are the situations that don't come across all that often. Speaking of situations that come across, shout out to everybody who's subscribed and become a member during the show. We appreciate it. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Help us grow the show. We're going to wrap it up here because Brandon's got a sick kid and I've got a sick puppy who just came home, and I need to go spoil him with all of the loves and all the treats and all the attention because my little guy has been gone for 3.5 days and I've been a complete wreck. I'm
glad everything's okay. Not to interrupt you. I'm glad we're able to do the pod. I know it's a balance, right? Where like it's obviously time sensitive, like newsworthy. Let's do this, but the health of whatever our loved ones, our pups, our dogs, our kids, all that has to come first.
It's okay.
Well, some people don't have kids. Some people just live that dog life. I cried like a baby when I lost my dog in September. Man, it felt like I lost a kid.
But my little guy is home, so I'm going to go spend some time with him. So thank you all. We appreciate you. Love you. Again, like, rate, review, subscribe. Help us grow the show. You can find us on social media at Danny Marang, at Brandon Sprague, at Jacked Ramsays. Email the show, jackedramsays@gmail.com. I am in the process of booking an NBA draft guy. I hope to have him ready to go this week. If we might go tomorrow, possibly Thursday. I'm still trying to figure it out. This time of year is very busy, and it's hard to get draft guys because this is their busiest part of the year as we ramp this stuff up. But we will kind of get that going. Mark's asking me if there's any studio updates. Between the puppy and my foot setback, I haven't had a ton. So the only thing that's happened out there is I've moved some more stuff in there. But that and the couple thousands of dollars of medical bills that I now have to go deal with. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. But again, thank you all. We appreciate you. We love you. Go out and enjoy the sun. Spend some time with your family, and we'll catch you guys either Wednesday or Thursday. As soon as I know, I'll let you guys know, and we'll kind of go from there. Again, thank you all very much. We appreciate you. Take care. Have a wonderful night. Talk soon.